You be the person that's developed this ability to bring out the best in them. Suppose you were working with your boss and he sent you to his office to get something. You're looking through the file cabinet, and you look over on his desk and there's a black notebook with your name on it. You flip open the notebook, and on every line, on every page, he's written down specific things you've done well since you came to work for him. How would you feel about that boss at that moment? I had someone last week say, I'd look for the other book. There's got to be another one somewhere. The truth is, you would feel very good about this person. Now listen carefully. You can forget everything else I've said. When you leave this conference, pick up a 79-cent spiral-bound notebook. Keep it in your briefcase, keep it on your desk. The people you work with very closely, take notice of what they do. Begin to make a note of the good things they do. And even some of your clients, some of your claimants, some of the property owners you work with. They're looking for a resolution. I understand that. You're in the tough spot of having to determine that resolution. But the context is totally in your control. Content, policy, and other issues may drive that. But the context, that's yours. And one of the contexts is that you develop a reputation for being a person that brings out the best in people. Now there's a second critical success factor that goes right along with change, and that's simply this. We don't listen with our ears. We listen with our heart, don't we? Chip's going to come back one more time. Chip, I want you to walk up here right on the platform, right up to the podium. There's a mic there. Chip, I want you to pretend that you work for me, and you're coming to tell me something. It doesn't matter what it is. And let's see what kind of receptive person I am in listening to what Chip has to say to me. Just knock on the door there. And morning, Chip. How are you doing?
Good. How about yourself, Barry?
I'm doing great. What can I do for you, Chip? What can I do for you, Chip? Make that, oh, yeah, I'll be right there. Yeah, tell him I'll be right there. Listen, I'm sorry, I got to run. We've got somebody upstairs who needs to see me. Do me a favor, put this in a memo, give it to me this afternoon.
I'll send
Thanks,
you an
Chip. Chip, my door's always open. Thank you very much. Now, it troubled me for just a moment. He looked as though he's done that before. I was a little bit concerned. He was pretty comfortable in that. Let me ask you the question. Was I listening to Chip? I beg your pardon. I can tell you every word he said to me. Good morning, Barry. Have you got a few minutes? I'll send you an email. I just told you every word he said to me. Where do you get off telling me that I wasn't listening? What gave you a clue that I wasn't listening? I was busy doing other things. What else? I wasn't looking at him. I didn't make eye contact. What else? I dismissed him. In other words, let me make sure that I understand you correctly. What I hear you saying to me this morning is, listening has nothing to do with our ears. Listening is not about hearing. Listening is about something else. Listening is about what happens inside our heart. Have you ever thought about that statement? What would work be like if I just didn't have to deal with the people? In fact, the American Management Association suggested that if you could close your door in your office and you didn't have to go out on any site inspections, you didn't have to go to any meetings, you didn't have to attend any conferences, you probably got about 2 weeks worth of work that you could get done, even if you didn't take any more messages in. But inevitably, people are a part of what we do. And people are the challenge that we have. It's not like paperwork where we can make sure it gets exactly what it wants. So how do we solve that challenge? You have to trust people. You are engaged with people. Now today, you're getting hundreds of bombardment of emails and direct mails and faxes and phone calls. And so the amount of information we carry is so much. So how do we respond to that change? Chip, will you do me a favor? Just step up here. He's going to give you an example of that. Chip, will you extend your hand straight out toward me? Up like this. Now, as I'm pushing on his hand, what's he doing? He's pushing back. Did I tell him to push back? No, my only assignment was extend your hand. But when an overweight Southerner with a sense of humor approached him, he had enough. Thanks, Chip. He's seen deliverance. I was close enough. He didn't need me to get any closer to him than I was. The natural response to change is just that. The natural response is resistance. And so that's a healthy thing. You're going to have an opportunity over the next few days in the continuing education classes you're in to be confronted by change. Things that perhaps you don't want to change to. Perhaps things that you're resistant to change to. And if you're a little bit resistant, that's a healthy thing. But the challenge is, how can I stop being resistant and move into the flow of it so that I can benefit from it? How many of you are married? Are there at least a few folks that are married? I've been married 32 years to the same lady. I'm working harder on communication today than I ever have in my life. And something we've learned is that when change happens, if you're not careful, you can make assumptions that are not very healthy. For example, I came home not long ago. Janice was in the kitchen, my wife. She did not greet me at the door. There was no kiss. There was no hello, nothing. So after a few minutes, I thought, I don't want to spend the evening like this. I need to find out what's wrong. So I walked into the kitchen and I said, "Sweetheart, is something the matter?" She said, "Yes. I thought about a question I wanted to ask you this morning. I thought about what your typical answer would be, and I'm mad at you for it." Can I jump back in there somewhere? Can I be part of that? If we're not careful, if we don't understand what it means to be able to face inevitable change, we begin to make assumptions. What do you think is the number one complaint we get from homeowners, from consumers, from anyone involved in customer service expositions? What do you think is the number one complaint they give about companies? They didn't listen to me. We've got a major company here in the Tampa Bay area that's undergoing enormous customer service problems. And it has nothing to do with the content of what they do. It has to do with the context. The poet said, "Who you are speaks so loudly, I cannot hear what you say." Sometimes we think our conflict with a property owner is a matter of content, when in reality, it may be just a little bit more a matter of the context in which we've approached it. Every good defense attorney knows this. Every good mediator knows this. Every good negotiator knows this. Content is important, but content is always contained in a context. And what we're talking about this morning is how you can become a master of the context. Flattery is abhorrent. Flattery is manipulative. Flattery will get you nowhere in your profession, and it'll get you nowhere in your business. But being able to look at someone and hold a mirror up and say, "Look at the strength I see in you," that will be your most powerful tool of motivating people. In fact, let me share with you what just happened. We're going to go behind the scenes of what just occurred. What actually happened is, I reached over here to Scott, and I looked inside his brain, and I pushed that button that says eject, and I slid a CD in his head, and I pushed play. What was the strength I told Scott I saw in him? His compassion for people. Now, if you stop there, that's better than flattery, but I took it one step further. I gave him evidence of that. What was the evidence I gave him of his compassion? His attention to the detail in this meeting. Now, what do you think are the chances that the next time I get to work with Scott, when he sees my name, he's going to remember, Barry believes that I have a compassion for people and that I pay attention to all the details of the meeting. What I have just done right here in front of you, I have taught Scott how to treat me. Listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. I do not say it lightly. You have taught people how to treat you. You really have. Oh, there'll be that 5 or 10% that are just, they're toxic and they've got dysfunction. But your clients, your property owners, your fellow adjusters, your boss, the people you work with, over the months and years, you have taught them how to treat you. Everybody's walking around with CDs playing in their head. Everybody's got a tape going. The question is, what does that tape say? Here's the wonderful news this morning. You have the power to put the tapes in the heads of the people that you work with. You have the power to determine what they think about when they see you coming. If Scott and I work together every week, if I made an emotional deposit every week, if about once a week I said, "Scott, here's another strength I've seen in you and here's the evidence of it," what do you think the chances are that every time he sees me coming, he's going to say to himself, no matter what the results are, this is going to be a positive encounter? Flattery is abhorrent. Don't say to your children, "You're a great kid." Great according to what? Great compared to what? What do you want from me? But instead, being able to look at somebody and hold that mirror. We see mirrors all day. You get to work and somebody says, "Here's your mirror, you're too short. Here's another mirror, you're too tall. Here's another mirror, you're too old. Here's another mirror, you're a female. Here's another mirror, you're a male. Here's another mirror, you're too young." Mirrors are everywhere. You want to stand out in your company? You want to stand out among the property owners that you work with, even among the claimants that you have to do difficult things with? You can take the next 3 days and get better in ways that you could never imagine if you're willing to do it. If you're willing to pay the same price he paid, that no matter how long you've been in the industry, 20 plus years, I'm going to learn something in the next 3 days. Or if you're brand new, I'm going to learn everything I possibly can. I was blessed at an early age to learn something. The people who confront you, the people who, and this may happen to you this week. You may hear something, or you may be talking to a colleague, and it may sting for a moment. Those sometimes can be the best learning moments to help you begin to be able to take your career to a whole new level. When I was 15 years of age, I was involved in an experiment that changed my life. It was one of those old HEW type things. Remember the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare? I was one of several students from very underprivileged areas, rural areas, who had the privilege of being uprooted and attending the most prestigious preparatory school in America in Andover, Massachusetts. Now, I had never been north of Asheville, North Carolina. I had never been south of Atlanta, Georgia. They sent a plane ticket, and my dad sent it back. He said, please send a bus ticket. And he said, son, if you fly on a plane, you won't see anything but the Asheville airport in Boston. But he said, if you ride a bus, you'll see everything. Boy, was he right. I saw Asheville, Danville, Richmond, Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia. In New York City, I can still remember New York City when we went underground and I was in a bus and I couldn't see trees or grass. So finally we get to Boston. I didn't know any better. I'd never been in an urban area. I walked up to the ticket agent. I was supposed to make a transfer to the bus to Andover, and I said, how far is it? And he said, oh, about 20, 25 miles. I thought, I can hitchhike that. That's not a problem. I didn't know you weren't supposed to hitchhike on major roads. Nobody ever taught me that. But luckily a guy picked me up in a pickup truck. And I can still at this moment remember stopping at that campus like a grass I had never seen that green. Buildings with red brick and names of alumni like Oliver Wendell Holmes and Patrick Henry. And I remember that first day I needed a drugstore, and I went downtown, and there was a sign over this shop that said, Sam's, and I was trying to read the word delicatessen. I walked in, and here was Sam, big guy, and he had a big apron on with, I think the juice was from about a week's worth of work. And I said, I'm looking for a drugstore. And he looked at me and said, Abanacona. I said, I'm sorry, I don't have any clue what you said. I'm looking for a drugstore. He said, Abanacona. And finally he looked at me and asked me, where are you from? And I said, well, I'm from North Georgia. He said, oh, Georgia, it's up on the corner. Like somehow he needed to say it slower. Sam became a great friend of mine. And he helped me learn the language of just north of Boston in the great city of Andover. Our first class came around. Dr. Smith was the English professor. Now, my father had warned me. He said, son, this is going to be hard. I went to school. I had 6 kids in my first grade class. In our high school class, the entire high school class was 46 kids. And now I'm sitting in a class and I've got a PhD standing in front of me. I'd never met one before. So on the first day, he made this assignment. He said, get out a piece of paper. You're going to write an essay. I wasn't sure what essay meant. But other kids are writing, and he had a question on the board. I thought, okay, I'm supposed to write about that. So I wrote. 20 minutes, I'm finished. He collects the papers. He says, I'll see you Wednesday. I thought, this is a piece of cake. My dad was wrong. This is easy. We came back on Wednesday, and Dr. Smith started putting something on everyone's desk. Now, I'm going to date myself. He had mimeographed something, and he's putting it on everybody's desk. That's another word for Xerox, for those of you that are in Generation X or Y. He began to put it on the desk, and when it hit my desk, I recognized it. It's my paper. My name was off, but it's my paper. I sat up kind of straight, and I thought, they're wrong. I walked in here on day 1, and I'm a star. Dr. Smith stood in front of the class, and here's what he said. Students, in front of you is an example of the writing of an illiterate person. And they all laughed like you did. And for the next 45 minutes, he tore that paper apart, word by word, sentence by sentence, describing how this person was illiterate. And he would come to a word, and he said, I suppose they made this word up. Maybe they have ancestors who were cavemen. And everybody's laughing. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, everything they told me about Yankees is true. Get me out of this place. I've got a bus ticket to North Carolina. I will never come north of the Mason-Dixon line again. The bell rang, and I darted for the door, and before I could get there, I heard a voice yell, Banther! I turned around, and Dr. Smith was at his desk. He said, come here. I marched over there, and he looked at me, and he said, you're angry with me, aren't you? I said, yes, I am. He took a piece of paper and a pencil, and he slid it across the desk. He said, can you write on that paper how you feel about me right now? I said, yes, sir, I can do that. I grabbed that pen. I started writing. And I probably had written about 20 seconds when he said these words. Good. Very good. Now your heart and your head and your hand are connected. You'll see me after class every day, and I will show you how to make that connection permanent. I didn't run. I didn't leave. It was 20 years to the year that I became president of one of Florida's oldest colleges. You've been very kind to let me come alongside you so early in the morning and challenge you with that. And I invite you, join me on that journey. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.